In the shadowed corridors of ancient Rome, love wore no gentle face. It was not serenaded beneath balconies, nor whispered in candlelight. It was strategized, weaponized, and ritualized, sharpened into a tool of power, not affection. The Roman marriage wasn't born from passion or intimacy, it was carved from ambition, forged like armor between families seeking wealth, prestige, and control. To love a spouse was an accident, to use one, a strategy. A Roman wedding was less a celebration, more a political handshake sealed with garlands and oaths. Brides, barely more than girls, were often betrothed before they could speak for themselves. Grooms, usually older, were chosen not for their hearts, but their holdings, dowries exchanged like currency. The bride's body became property, her future a negotiation, her silence an expectation. But the real shock lies not in what was expected inside the marriage, but what was allowed outside of it. Infidelity in Rome wasn't scandalous, it was assumed. Husbands were free to indulge in the flesh beyond their homes. Courtesans, slaves, entertainers, male or female, it mattered little. As long as the man remained the dominant one, the initiator, the controller, his desires were not judged, but accepted, even admired. A man's virility was public currency. Fidelity, ironically, was considered unnatural for powerful men. Passion wasn't to be caged, it was to be expressed. And yet, for the Roman wife, the rules were carved in iron. Her body was her husband's domain, her loyalty his right. A woman caught in adultery faced exile, even death. Her male counterpart. He returned home to a warm bath and a society that called his betrayal custom. But perhaps most misunderstood is how the Romans viewed same-sex desire. They did not see love in terms of gender but in terms of power. Labels like gay, straight, or bisexual didn't exist because identity wasn't measured by attraction, but by control. In a relationship between men, it was not the union that was judged, it was the roles. To dominate was to be a man. To submit was to flirt with disgrace. A Roman citizen could sleep with male slaves, actors, or adolescents as long as he retained the upper hand, both literally and socially. But if he, as an adult male citizen, took the passive role, the stigma could shatter reputations. Submissiveness was weakness, and in Rome, weakness was the one unforgivable sin. Among the elite, this power dynamic stretched into politics. Julius Caesar himself was rumored to have been the Queen of Bithynia after his youthful alliance with King Nicomedes. His enemies weaponized the gossip, hurling insults in the Senate, mocking him in graffiti as a man who gave himself to a foreign king. Caesar, however, brushed it off. In Rome, image was everything, but denial could be more powerful than truth. And sometimes the truth was blurred by ambition. To rule, one had to seem untouchable, even a curry. Sexual relationships between older men and adolescent boys were not rare, they were institutionalized. A type of mentorship, they claimed, a form of education. But beneath the noble words was something darker. Roman law didn't protect the age of consent, ambiguous, the boundaries. Faint, pleasure, after all, belonged to the powerful. And yet there were lines, even in Rome's decadence. If a man of status crossed into open obsession with male entertainers or pursued relations with freeborn Roman boys, his peers would sneer, whisper, and slowly erode his stature. The sin wasn't the act, it was being obvious. Even women, who were often excluded from Rome's sexual narratives, had their secret lives. Vestal virgins, sworn to 30 years of chastity, held immense religious influence. But the punishment for breaking their vow, being buried alive. Entombed beneath the city with only a flickering lamp and a single loaf of bread, Rome worshipped purity in public and strangled it in private. Female desire was either ignored or punished, their pleasure considered a threat to order. Yet the walls of bathhouses, carved with graffiti and etched erotic scenes, told another story, a secret one. Women, too, watched. Women, too, desired. It's easy to look back on Rome and feel a false sense of superiority. To believe we've evolved past their brutal contradictions. But the deeper you dig, the more familiar their world becomes, the commodification of relationships. The imbalance of power, the public masks and private truths. Ancient Rome wasn't a fallen world, it was a mirror. One that reflects the same obsessions and hypocrisies we still live with, dressed in modern clothes. The Roman household, or domus, wasn't just a family home, it was a power center. The pater familias, the male head, ruled with near absolute authority. He could marry off his daughters, sell his children into slavery, even execute them without trial. He was judge, priest, executioner. His word was law. And beneath him, wives, concubines, slaves, and children navigated a web of silence, duty, and unspoken resentment. Love may have existed, but it survived in the margins, in stolen glances and whispered nights, rare, dangerous, real. Even in death, Roman customs revealed the grotesque blend of sentiment and spectacle. Widows were expected to mourn with performative agony, ripping their clothes, beating their breasts, wailing through the streets. But once the tears dried, they were often remarried like assets on a ledger. Grief had a timer. Emotion had a place, but legacy, that was eternal. Tomb inscriptions told stories the living never dared speak aloud, tales of forbidden love, unrecognized children, secret affairs, and last words meant to shame the living. The deeper you go into Roman love, the more the lines blur, between affection and control, between desire and dominance, between freedom and facade. What the Romans truly worshipped wasn't love, it was order. Everything had its place. Everything had its role. And anything that threatened that structure, be it a rebellious wife, a passive man, or a love that refused to hide, was silenced, erased, or entombed in scandal.